It's here! You've been waiting for it! Havoc Demon Hunter with the first talent tree ever to grace the spec as a whole and the class as well. And a lot of people were wondering if this could be done because Demon Hunter is, historically been one of the more bare bones specs and has suffered from lack of depth for many years and lack of options, lack of abilities, lack of passives, you name it. Is that true in Dragonflight? It most certainly is not. Holy shit, this is fucking amazing and it looks so good. Oh my god. And we will get into it after a quick shout out to our patrons and our Patreon page supporting every video that we do on a daily basis, covering all alphas, TLFs, guides, streams, podcasts, all of that. If you like the content that we do and you want to see more of it and you want to support and make it possible, make it a reality, consider checking the Patreon link down below and visiting our Patreon page. You would be supporting us directly. We would be so grateful, very appreciative. Plus, you will most likely get some goodies along the way, depending on the tier that you want to get in. Access to, obviously, the Patreon group in our Discord, the monthly Patreon talks, wallpapers, and so on and so forth. And we would love you for it. Thank you very much for considering supporting our content, making sure that all of this is possible. And we're kicking it off with Havoc. Man, listen, wow, there's so much to talk about, and I really don't want to end up talking about Demon Hunter for an hour because I probably could, and Jesus Christ. But let's actually go into it a little bit to the point when it comes to the general talent tree, and I'm not gonna go into all of them. You will notice that if you take a quick look, the right hand side feels very heavy from Vengeance with a lot of sigil abilities and a lot of tankiness nodes. I'm not gonna go into all of them. They're definitely decently good. You'll most likely want to take something that augments your spec, and maybe this is a clear indication of how Havoc can be, since you will require certain mechanics like, Master of the Glaive and Bouncing Glaives to make your glaive mechanics work, because you do have a couple of talents in the spec tree that will augment throw glaives, so you will definitely want stuff like this. You also have, after you start with Vengeful Retreat, you have Unrestrained Fury, which increases your maximum fury by 20, which is kind of necessary, which is something that you already have right now by default. Havoc, I think, has 120 max fury, while Vengeance has 100, so I'm not sure. Obviously, Vengeance can get this as well. With that out of the way, you will be able to get, there are a bunch of stuff that you will be looking at, obviously the kicks and the dispels and all of that, but some of them that you might be interested in is, first of all, Aura of Pain, which is maybe one of the more important ones to get at least early on, that increases the critical strike chance of immolation by 5%. Other stuff and you will notice kind of like a soft reset, which is something that certain talents have, whereas the next node is Rush of Chaos. It's not connected to anything, and if you have put 8 points into the top layer of the talent tree, you don't need anything to go further down, and realistically you don't. You can actually go down from Rush of Chaos, which is a neat little thing, since if you went to the left or to the right, none of them are actually throughput talents. You don't gain any damage by picking the side, so this is a good point if people just want to maximize their output. They don't need to waste points into useless talents, which is actually really good. I really love these types of choices. And it obviously goes down into Fellblade, which you'll probably take it 110% of the time. Although this is really cool and it definitely makes Havoc play way better with Fellblade, it's so good that it doesn't really feel like a choice, and maybe that's okay. It's kind of one of those things where you kind of wished it's baseline, and we'll talk about this as well when we go into the spec tree and talk about, the old school demon blades and stuff like that. You'll notice Infernal Armor to the right, which you can probably take, especially if you haven't taken anything to the sides, where you get a little bit more armor, and to the left you have the Leech and all of that. You go into utility, but if you keep going down where the more throughput nodes are, you will get to Demonic versus Demonic Origins. Now, this is an interesting node because obviously Demonic has been a core aspect of Havoc for the longest time, and it's always felt weird in the talent trees and talents, not trees, but the talents that we've had right now, since you would never not pick Demonic. And now it's on a choice node with Demonic Origins, which I also don't know if this is a balanced choice, because Demonic Origins basically reduces the meta cooldown by 2 minutes, And with the 1 minute more from Rush of Chaos, you essentially reduce it by 3 minutes. So it can become, what is it, a 2-minute cooldown Metamorphosis? Not a 1 minute. So it's a 2-minute cooldown Metamorphosis, or it should be 2 minutes, right? If my math is correct. If you subtract 3 from 5, you're left with 2. And you have to pit that against the demonic. Now, I don't know if this is balanced, because people have been used to play with demonic, and obviously there's gonna be a couple of I-beam recess talents as well that will work into giving you more demonic windows. And with a couple of other talents in the spec tree, it doesn't really feel like demonic origins is a thing. It could probably be way better for vengeance, I can imagine, since Metamorphosis is as a cooldown, as a standalone cooldown, is way more impactful for vengeance than it is for Havoc. So maybe that's why it's a choice node. But for Havoc, I have a hard time seeing how demonic origins can outpace demonic unless it's being buffed, unless it reduces. Maybe even if it reduces by 1 more minute to if it can make it so that you bring your Metamorphosis to a 1 minute cooldown altogether, maybe that can be put in a competitive node with demonic by itself. Since Metamorphosis, however cool it is, it's not that great of a cooldown, although there are some talents that make it a little bit better than it is in Shadowlands, so we'll get to that in a second. You have Darkness there that you need to talent into, which is, it's okay for Havoc, it's probably going to be very amazing for Vengeance, but it does start with a 5-minute cooldown, which maybe that's good. I mean, people have been saying that Darkness is a very strong cooldown. However, it's still an RNG cooldown, so you can pop it. It's not like a anti-magic zone from DKs or barrier from discipline priest or anything like that. It's not guaranteed damage reduction, it's RNG damage reduction. If it procs, it's really good, but if it doesn't, it's really shit. And now it's on a 5-minute cooldown. You can augment it by going down to either take Pitch Black, which reduces it back to 3 minutes, which is I guess this will probably matter depending on how often you would want it in a raid, if it aligns with certain mechanics. And the other option in this choice node is Long Night, which increases its duration by 2 seconds, meaning that maybe you want it for 10 seconds instead of the 3 minutes 8 seconds, which actually is not a bad choice node, because it does make you augment your darkness the way you would like it, depending on the encounter design. Obviously, the encounter design is important, and exactly how your guild or raid will want to use this darkness also factors into what upgrade you pick. So I think this is actually a better choice node. We just are very reliant on what kind of encounters we will have. You will see Demonic Appetite going down from Blur. Demonic Appetite has been, a core Havoc talent for throughput. Now Chaos Strike has a chance to spawn a lesser Soul Fragment. Consuming any Soul Fragment grants 30 Fury. Obviously that translates into damage. It's a lot of Fury. You're probably going to always want to take this. You cannot really avoid it. So there, I don't know if you're going to keep going down to the Capstone, which is Desperate Instinct, something that has hardly ever been used. Maybe PvP, but not even. And I don't know why it's a Capstone. It still puts Blur on cooldown when it procs. So I could see Desperate Instincts being a valid Capstone if it wouldn't put Blur on cooldown. But it does, so I have a hard time justifying ever picking this. I'd rather pick something from the Vengeance side of the talent tree, where you get more HP or armor, or maybe even play with some sigils or whatever, instead of taking Desperate Instincts. But that can be a personal choice. And you'll notice in the middle that we have the Hunt. Yes, the coolest Covenant ability for Demon Hunter that they ever could make. The Hunt is there, and you can get it, and it does damage, and it's so fucking cool. And it also has an upgrade in the choice node that is the actual Capstone. Unnatural Malice, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is the Night Fae conduit that makes the Hunt's dot deal 30% more damage. This is really good. It's what made Havoc deal a lot more damage last season. Obviously, Havocs don't play Night Fae in Season 4 on live, but this can be really good, both in single target, both in AoE. However, in AoE, you might want Fae Empowered Elixir, which is the nerfed Torghast power, where the cooldown of the Hunt is reduced by 12 seconds whenever an enemy is killed while it's affected by its damage over time effect, which is really cool. It can be optimized in High Mythic Plus if you pop it and you make sure that you constantly kill targets during that dot time. And the dot time, I think it lasts for 30 seconds does it? Okay, so you charge to your target, striking them for nature damage, rooting them in place for 1.5 seconds, and dealing nature damage over 6 seconds up to 5. So it's over 6 seconds. So you kind of want to... This is a little bit harder to optimize, okay? You would kind of really want to kill targets during this dot, which means that you might not use the dot's overall actual damage too much, but you will want to reset it for that burst damage that you strike. So it's an interesting upgrade. It doesn't work right now on alpha, so I couldn't really test the viability of it. But obviously, one of the stronger points of the hunt is the dot that it leaves, and it can be put on many other targets. So it worked in Torghast since you just had to kill a target and it would reset, and you can keep extending that dot, and that was really cool. However, only 12 seconds is, I guess, if you're putting it at the end of the pack, since it's unlikely that you're gonna start with the hunt and kill the pack in 6 seconds, unless you're doing like really low dungeon keys, then maybe it can have some play, but we'll see, we'll see. Now let's actually go into the spec talents, and boy oh boy, alright, so you'll notice that the tree is basically shaped differently, which is like kind of cool. It feels very different than all the other trees, and it's actually not that bad designed in terms of how the nodes are spread. Some of the nodes are kind of weirdly placed, and you know, you wish they would be on the other side, but we'll get into that as well. It's still very flexible, at least in the top part, where you have a lot of options and you don't have to talent into the ones that you don't want to unlock the gates, where other specs feel like you have to take everything just to unlock, which well, is what it is. You'll notice a lot of blade dance talents and stuff like that you're aware of, and you know, dancing with fate, first blood, and trail of ruin as well, that augment blade dance, also really good. Some chaos strike damage options as well, and you will definitely notice if you keep going down the middle, which is basically your core abilities and augments your spec fantasy, let's say, and you'll see the stuff that I'd mentioned about, and also Furious Gaze, which, you know, if you want to get the full effect of your eye beam the way it is right now on live, you definitely have to take Furious Gaze, and Looks Can Kill. Furious Gaze giving you the haste, and Looks Can Kill, making it so that it guarantees critical strikes. I guess it's one of those things where you have to put 3 points in, or well, 2 points rather, because you unlock eye beam as the first option in the talent tree, but 2 extra points just to get what you already have baseline. But this is how the talents are made. They're not supposed to be just talents, they're supposed to kind of work together with your spellbook and give you all the ranks upgrades that we've been using in Shadowlands right now. Rank 2 of eye beam, rank 3 of eye beam, right? Those are also in the talents. So yeah, that's kind of how it is. And you will keep going down, and you will notice closer to the bottom you will have meta, and by extension demonic augment talents that will work really well and will probably justify taking demonic instead of demonic urges like we talked before. You'll notice chaotic transformation, which has been an Azerite in BFA and has become baseline in Shadowlands. When you activate meta, the cooldown of blade dance and eye beams are immediately reset, which, as the tooltip would indicate, should work only when activating metamorphosis. So maybe this can be something that you would want with demonic origins, since you get more of these chaotic transformations out, but we'll see. You also have Restless Hunter, which makes leaving a demon form grants you a charge of Fell Rush and increase the damage of your next blade dance by 50%. This is really cool. I don't think Havoc ever had this. Maybe it was an Azerite trait that I forgot from BFA that was never used, but this is pretty cool. I mean, obviously you get a charge of Fell Rush, which will work with momentum and stuff like that, or you get more damage on your blade dance, and we already talked about all the blade dance sounds up above, which are really good. And you also have Inner Demon, which I do remember we had before. Also, I think it was an Azerite trait. Basically, when you enter demon form, your next chaos strike will cause you to unleash your inner demon to come out, crashing into your enemies and dealing a lot of AoE damage. It doesn't seem like it's AoE kept from the tooltip. I find it hard to believe that they will keep uncapped spells in AoE, because even some of them from other specs that were not indicated in the tooltip to be AoE capped didn't seem to hit more than 5 or 8 targets. So if it's not AoE capped, this can be really good in high Mythic Plus dungeons, and because that's great, because, you know, no AoE cap. You will also be getting most likely improved metamorphosis, where during metamorphosis you get 20% more haste, and this is what I talked about making Metamorphosis for Havoc at the very least a much more impactful cooldown, since right now in Shadowlands and in BF as well has been very lackluster for a 5-minute cooldown, now down to 3 minutes. So again, this could be good. This could make Metamorphosis more impactful, which is great for Havoc. And you go all the way to the capstone, which is Shattered Destiny, which is so cool. The duration of your active demon form is extended by 0.1 second per 5 fury spent. And obviously, this kind of changes a little bit the dynamic because it just gives you more meta uptime, and you would think, well, yeah, whatever. Optimizing meta uptime has always been something that Havoc used to do. This obviously makes it even more of a thing, and I'm still trying to think if this could warrant you getting Demonic Origins, but I find it so unlikely because if you do play stuff like, you know, Blind Fury, where I-Beam generates Fury, then you'll always go into meta with a lot of Havoc, especially in Demonic. So taking this as well, you'll probably just constantly slap Fury consumers. I've tested this in dungeons, and obviously this is still the beginning stages of the Havoc identity. So far, there's so much Fury gains, and there are so many abilities that you need to use and uptime for things that you need to set up, that when you go into meta, constantly spending Fury is not always going to happen. You might have a cooldown to put out like a Fell Barrage or throw some glaives or activate Immolation. So you to fully take advantage of Shattered Destiny, you'll really want to think about your rotation, and I think this puts another spin, another layer of depth to Havoc that a lot of people wanted, and will make it require some form of setup so that you can maintain high uptimes on your demon form, which is, I guess, good, but we'll see how that plays out once we have harder content where mobs don't die in 10 seconds. Now, if you look on the left-hand side, this definitely feels to be more single target focused, but you also get momentum and a lot of damage amp maintenance buffs and things that, let's say this could be the more maybe complicated side of the spec, or a little bit more busy. I wouldn't say necessarily complicated, but it definitely requires you to do X and Y and use other spells that you wouldn't probably use normally. And you will notice that it kind of starts with initiative, which is not implemented, but it is the much better first strike form Korain, where this one makes it so that you damage an enemy before they damage you, increases your critical strike chance by 15% for 5 seconds. And if you use Vengeful Retreat, it refreshes your potential to trigger this effect on any enemies you are in combat with. So you can basically get more uptime on that crit, which we're gonna talk about crit a lot. It's really, really good. And yeah, it obviously will work with momentum because we'll get to that in a second. You'll also have Chaos Theory, Relentless Onslaught, and Essence Break, which augment Chaos Strike among other things. So, you know, the whole single target argument here. You have Isolated Prey, which will just make some of your spells better when they hit only one target. Specifically, I-Beam will deal 30% extra damage, which is what we'll be looking for if you do want to slap that boss. Even Fell Rush can generate a chunk of Fury if you are playing Momentum, and you'll probably will be playing Momentum if you go all the way to this side of the talent tree. And this will work really well with Serrated Blades, because Serrated Blades makes throwing a Throw Glaive on a target, make it take extra damage from I-Beam. Obviously, that would apply in AoE, but since we're talking about single target as well, having more damage amp on I-Beams is never a bad thing. Cycle of Hatred is also a little bit further down the row. It's good. I mean, it's the old Cycle of Hatred. You'll definitely really want to take this if you're playing stuff like Serrated Blades and all the I-Beam talents and Demonic as well. This will probably be, you know, the biggest augment to, you know, getting more and more Demonics out. Know Your Enemy is not yet implemented, but it makes your attacks have an increased critical strike damage bonus equal to your critical strike chance. Now, this fucking sounds pretty strong on paper. It obviously depends on how it's actually implemented and if it affects everything in your kit, and from the tooltip you would think it would affect everything in your kit. If you build towards a lot of critical strike chance, and I don't know if this takes into consideration stuff like initiative, stuff like Chaos Theory, right? Where Chaos Strike can have an increased critical strike chance. Will those crits do even more crit damage, or does it just take the crit from your pure stats? Like, how does that actually work? if it works with that, then you're obviously just gonna stack crit, and you're probably gonna get something like 30% crit when we get into the first raid tier. Maybe 20% with gear. That's kind of how where we were in the first tier, and with all the effects you can go over 30 or maybe 40% as well. That's 30 to 40% crit damage. That's gonna be really nuts, and considering you get all the haste funnels from I-Beam and meta. I don't know, this sounds really good. I don't know if it's going to be implemented like this or if it will have some blacklisted spells and effects that will not work with it. Burning Wood is back, and it's slightly out of place all the way on this side of the talent tree, since it does increase the immolation damage that the targets take from you once you proc the Burning Wound on them, when all the immolation talents are on the right hand side of the talent tree. Maybe it's placed here because you'll likely use Burning Wood more in single targets, although AoE tab targeting and spreading that Burning Wood is not something new. Or maybe if it was placed on the right hand side, it would be a little bit way too much damage, but who knows. I feel like it should be on the right hand side because it's a little bit out of the way if you do go this route. And all the way to the bottom is the capstone momentum, which has slightly been changed. It gives you 12% damage for 6 seconds after you use this time still Fell Rush, but now Glide, the Hunt, and Vengeful Retreat as well, which is crazy. Now currently on alpha the duration stacks, and I don't think that's intended because it never stacked on live. I think it only stacked in Torghast. So I don't know if they're taking that spell ID, but you can essentially glide and get 5 seconds, 6 seconds of momentum whenever you proc the glide. It doesn't matter how long you glide for. Once you proc the glide, you get 6 seconds of momentum. I don't know how that will play out in actual combats. I don't know if it's even needed because it's enough to have Vengeful Retreat and Fell Rush, and add the Hunt on top of that. That's actually pretty cool. So we'll see. It's nice. I love momentum. It's one of my favorite playstyles for Havoc. It's not a surprise. But yeah, let's actually go into the right-hand side as well. And you'll notice that you'll get Demon Blades versus Insatiable Hunger, which has been something of a choice node for... although it hasn't been a node so far, it's been a choice between these two for a while. I am never have been a fan of Demon's Bite for how busy and fast-paced, well, let's say fast-paced Havoc's rotation has been until now, but now it's also going to be busy. You have a lot of things to do. Pressing and spamming a lot of Demon's Bite feels very weird. If they can make Demon's Bites generate more fury and do maybe less damage, but, you know, have fewer globals sunk into it, then maybe I can not pick Demon's Blades. But right now, likely you'll probably always pick Demon Blades, considering you have, let's say, buttons like Throw Glaives right now that you will throw a lot more. Blind Fury is also slightly lower. You don't need to take Demon's Blade to get Blind Fury, but hey, you can take it. It's basically a lot of Fury and basically fills your Fury bar once you I-Beam. It's nothing new, it's always there. It's a 2-pointer, so but playing with this felt like I was getting a lot of Fury in dungeons, so I don't know how much value will have, considering that you also have to spend 2 points on. You might just go to Unbound Chaos instead, and which is the same Unbound Chaos, also a 2-pointer, so we're getting a little bit to the 2-pointer nodes right now, and you can go down to Growing Inferno from Unbound Chaos if you so desire, and you wouldn't have to pick Blind Fury if it wouldn't be necessary for you, although we talked about the Shattered Destiny capstone, and you would want to go into Demonic or in meta with a full bar of Fury to take advantage of that. But if you don't take Shattered Destiny for whatever reason, you might get away with not picking Blind Fury. Glaive Tempest and Fell Barrage all the way to the right hand side is a choice node, and this is cool. It's an extra button, but right now it feels weird because it has no synergy. I mean, it never really had any synergy with the Havoc kit, but right now pretty much everything and their mom has a synergy with something in the kit, while these two do not. So they feel a little bit more weird than normal, although they're still pretty cool. And they feel like they would work way better with stuff like Momentum, since Momentum gives you a small damage window amp that you can take advantage of, and you would normally, you know, Fell Rush and then Glaive, or Fell Rush and Fell Barrage, and use that 12% extra damage to augment these short cooldowns. That feels way better, so maybe they could be they would make more sense if they could be swapped to the left-hand side. I don't know with what, but who knows? Maybe with certain blades, or maybe certain glaives, or maybe certain glaives can be swapped with Unbound Chaos. A lot of Havoc big brains from the Fellhammer Discord have already made some opinions about this on how you can swap a couple of them. But I digress. Let's move on to something that's new, which is Rage Fire. This is interesting. This makes it so that when your Immolation Aura deals critical damage, 50% of that damage is stored, and once Immolation is stored and once Immolation Aura expires, all that stored damage explodes around you in AoE damage. Again, doesn't seem to be AoE cap, which is pretty good. Again, one more point that will make it so that crit is probably going to be your best stat no matter what, because obviously you want more and more of this fight, this talent, especially in AoE, which can turn into like some massive AoE damage. Like we don't know yet. You will definitely work really well with Growing Inferno, which is the conduit that we have right now that I mentioned before. Felfire Hard, which was a little bit higher, and Aura of Pain from the general talent tree that I mentioned before. That's gonna be really good with all the Immolation Aura talent. So yeah, you're gonna be an Immolation god if you do take this. So we'll see how that plays out in High Mythic Plus. Really excited to see that in play. Fell Bombardment, the legendary that never made it, that was so fucking cool in beta for Shadowlands, but it got nerfed into the ground. Now, since you don't have to sacrifice another legendary to get it, it's just a point. It's actually, is it 2 pointers? It's a 1 pointer, which is really good. It stacks 5 times when Immolation Aura has a chance to proc one of these stacks. It lasts for, I think, 30 seconds on you, so you will definitely get all the stacks up. It won't drop, you won't waste it, and it will make Throw Glaive deal 250% of the damage to your main target and throw another glaive around. And with all the glaive talents that you've picked, this could be really good. Obviously, in single target, this augments a lot of single target damage. However, just underneath it, you have Soul Rend, which makes Throw Glaive leave us a damage dot on your targets for 6 seconds, which this reminds me of Season 1 Legion, best legendary for Havoc, where you threw a glaive and it would leave a bleed up, and that bleed would do a lot of damage. This is basically that renamed and turned into chaos damage instead. And with obviously certain blades and all the glaive talents, they could work really well. And this is more AoE focused, and you will go all the way down to the capstone, which is any means necessary. And this makes your Mastery Demonic Presence also cause your single school magic damage, Jesus Christ, to be dealt as chaos instead. So I believe that this is just supposedly turning all of your damage into chaos from the tooltip. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I'm thinking something like Blade Dance that's supposed to do physical damage. This Blade Dance also is augmented by Trail of Ruin, which does chaos damage. And I am not sure what any means necessary is supposed to augment, since most of your damage is already chaos. Throw Glaive, I think it should still be physical damage, but a lot of things have changed. So I'm not, and it's also not implemented. So this is something that I'm not particularly sure of yet, what any means necessary is supposed to do, and obviously if it's any good. And just below, just above it, not necessarily a capstone, but you do have Father to the Flame, which I believe is the Necrolord Covenant ability, now with the chance to proc, and it's a choice noble with Elysian Decree, which Havoc never really used Elysian Decree in Shadowlands unless you just wanted to, but it was never really that good for Havoc. However, right now, at least in terms of the damage numbers, it's doing a crap ton of damage. So, and obviously Father to the Flame is a really nice effect. It depends exactly how this plays out, because it's like it's a double whammy. You get the demon, you slap it, you deal AoE damage, but you also get, at least you should be getting, the buff to all of your damage when killing a demon from your passive. So we'll see how that plays out. But this is it so far, and man, there's quite a bit here. A lot more than a lot of people have expected, considering that, you know, Havoc has been one of those, it has like 3 buttons and 2 passives, and that's the whole spec. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and it's looking really good. It's one of the better talents out there when it comes to all the specs, and puts so many others to shame. And it's reassuring. I cannot wait to see what they deal with it in its final iteration, with all the changes and all the feedback that's going to be put into it. I am excited. Are you excited? You should be excited, because Havoc is looking amazing. One more time, thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel. If you consider becoming our patron, check the link down below. It will support us. It will actually mean a lot to us, and we would be really grateful for it. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.